Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Sports Talk with kerry, wehmeyer show for Thursday, November 12th. We're going to be going over today's news headlines. Also, we'll have the Willie Fritz show today here on Sportscaster, YouTube, and Facebook. That will be in just a few moments. So once again, thanks for joining us here. Let's go ahead and send out our links. We'll send the links out to Sportscaster, YouTube, and Facebook. So we'll go ahead and do that as we go. So let me get this switched off the screen. And there we go. Let's go ahead and send our links out. We'll send those links out to everybody. Make sure everybody gets their links. If you want to come in video chat with us, you can. We will let you come in. Let's go ahead and send those out. And I'll start sending out links. There they are. I'll start sending one out to Facebook as well. The Facebook link as well will be on Facebook as well. So we're sending out links all over the to all our networks. So let me get those links sent out, and we'll be on in a few minutes. There we go. And we'll send the link out to YouTube as well. YouTube, if you want to come in as well, come on down. And I'll send that in. There we go. All the links are sent in. Also, if you want a Twitter feed, if you want Twitter people, you want to come in as well, we'll send you a link. So I'm going to go ahead and send that link to Twitter as well, and you can be able to get in on the broadcast today. Once again, thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and begin the Willie Fritz show on the current podcast. So we'll do that momentarily. Let's go ahead and send that up. Light that up. And we will begin doing that now.
This is the Willie Fritz Show on The Current, brought to you by Bryan Subaru, Capital One, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana. There's the snap. It's a play action. McMillan rolls to the left. Nobody is there. He can stroll past the pylon. Touchdown, Tulane.
5 seconds left. Inbound to Clark. Top of the key. Drives in the paint. Right hand floater off the glass. It's good.
Quick feed left side. Lost it at space. Rainbow's a three. Book it. McMillan steps up. He throws middle. Caught by McCluskey. Breaks out of a tackle. 10, 5. Angles far sideline.
Are you kidding me?
Touchdown, Tulane.
Are you kidding me?
Roll wave.
Roll wave. Let's get a win.
Welcome back to another edition of the Willie Fritz Show here on The Current. Glad you could join us. We'll have some conversations coming up shortly with the voice of the Army Black Knights, but here with the head coach. Coach, I did want to start with Patrick Johnson, just because of the record that he did set. It was fun to watch that sideline afterward. Boy, was he tremendously mobbed by his teammates. I guess as you just kind of look back over the arc of his career and what he's been able to accomplish, the names that he's passed here at Tulane, whether it's Marco Lavari, whether it's LaFrance, whether it's Blackman, 23 and a half sacks for Patrick Johnson. What comes to your mind with that accomplishment?
Well, it's hard to do. And sometimes those guys worry about the woulda, shoulda, couldas. He probably came close, real close to maybe 10 more sacks over the course of his career. But we're just really happy for Patrick. He is a fine young man. As I've told you many times before, if a young man's had a good 18 years, we're going to do a fabulous job with him. And he's had a great 18 years. Parents have done a great job of raising a fine young man. And I don't think I've ever had a problem with Patrick in 4 years. And that's hard with 18 to 22 year olds, but very mature young man and just very happy that he's etched his name permanently in the record books here at Tulane.
A week ago, we talked about Darnell Mooney. I'm always curious about, the beginnings of the story as we look back from where we are now. I talked to you about the recruiting process for Darnell and the growth point for Darnell. I'm curious what stands out to you about the recruiting process for Patrick, what you remember about those times, offering him the scholarships, and what have you most noticed about the way he's been able to grow throughout the past 4 years?
Well, we offered him really late. He was a tight end, defensive end. Played at Notre Dame High School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And, I went up there personally last week, and everybody at the school had nothing but great things to say about him. At the school, I had a long visit with both his mom and dad. His dad actually played football at UT Chattanooga. And, you checked all the boxes. I'm 100% on character when I get a chance to go to the school, meet the kid, meet the parents, ask the questions. I'm very direct when I ask questions, and what's tough is sometimes I'm not able to get every place.
Yeah.
And I got to rely on the judgment of others at times. But as soon as we offered him, we set up a visit, and then lo and behold, about 5 other offers came in. Immediately after we offered it. So we feel like we do a good job of making our own decisions and not waiting on someone else to make a decision for us. And he came and visited, really enjoyed it, liked it. And, I think he's got some really close friends here, and I think he's had just a great experience. On the field, off the field. He's taking 18 hours right now, and he'll graduate in 3.5 years. So he put a bunch of work into it and gotten everything out of it that he can. So it's he's had a great football career. He's had a great career academically, and I think he's had a lot of fun too. The right kind of fun.
Yeah. I'm curious if you could pull the curtain back for us when you have the opportunity to speak with whoever the people are at the high school. Is there a certain type of person that you seek out, and what sort of questions do you ask to try to determine whether or not this person is a fit at Tulane?
I'm very direct in my questions, and I just kind of, I don't know. I've had some people tell me they don't know if it's a gift or a curse, but I feel like I can kind of read body language in people and just how the young man interacts with, the principal, the coaches, his parents. If he's not treating his mom and dad with respect, he's not going to treat me with respect. And that's not what we need in a football program. And so it's when you get in there and you're around him for a period of time, everybody on a visit's good around me. I'm the head coach, and they can maybe fake it for a little while, but if you're around them 2 or 3 times, boy, it's hard to fake it. And so he was. We were spot on. I've been wrong before. I shouldn't say I'm 100%. There's been some times where they fooled me before, but not very often.
It's interesting that you brought up the principal or the parents or whatever it has to be, because, I think people can take the perspective of, it's been said before to me that if you want to really know what a student athlete is like or what a team is actually up to, you talk with trainers, you talk with strength and conditioning coaches, because they're the ones that are with those student athletes day in and day out. And like you said, sometimes they can put on their best behavior around the head coach or around the top administrator or whatever it happens to be.
Guidance counselors.
Yes.
They're big. Custodians. I see how people treat people who of service who are doing service for others. It just, it's always interesting, to see, sometimes they're on a visit, and I've had some interesting conversations with pro scouts and, about guys coming in on a visit, and they'll have the lowest person in the office drive them around town, and then they come back and report on the conversation, because their guard's down.
Yes.
So it's, obviously I've learned over the years with pro scouts, they come in and they quiz you up and down and ask you good questions, and sometimes have to make you think, and then I've had a lot of pro scouts ask me about Patrick. It's a compliment I try to give these guys. I hope my daughters marry somebody like him, and because that's the kind of character he's got.
I was just curious too about the fact that he has gone through different defensive line coaches. I don't know if that's a thing that is a challenge.
And the coach moves on to another situation. And one of the things, when I hire a coach is, I try to get to know his personality and, I was really interviewing Coach Dawson for 4 years. Every time I went to his high school, I would sit in there for a long period of time. A couple of times I wasn't even recruiting anybody. I was just, interested to see how he operated, but also he was from the same family tree as Kevin in terms of defensive line, technique, and fundamentals. And I didn't want to change what we were doing up front, so I wanted somebody from that family. So yeah, it's something that the student athlete has to adapt to, but there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and sometimes how somebody words something might be a little different than how somebody else words something, but that's just part of it.
All right. So before we turn the page to Army, just kind of curious, your perspective on Coach Peoples is now at Indiana. They've obviously had a tremendous season. They've beat both Penn State and Michigan, which is fairly remarkable for that program, I guess, in the top 15 for the first time in, a couple of decades. Your perspective on the way Coach Peoples has helped that program and just kind of watching from afar at a storyline like that in college football.
I've texted with Kevin a little bit, and I'm sure some of the coaches are visiting with him quite a bit. I hired Kevin in his first job in 1994. They coached for me at Blinn Junior College.
Okay.
And then a few years later, he coached for me at Central Missouri. And then he coached for me at Georgia Southern, and I brought him over here. So he's a fine defensive line coach, and I'm sure he's only helped that program out. He's very good.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Army, and a guy that is the head coach there is someone that you have a tremendous amount of respect for, Coach Monken. What's your relationship? Obviously, there are some ties considering you are both the head coach at Georgia Southern, but the respect you have for Coach Monken.
Well, I replaced Jeff at Georgia Southern. He went Georgia Southern up to Army. And, some of the coaches, I kept some of those guys on staff with me. When a guy leaves and goes someplace else, he can't bring everybody. So I think I kept, 3 or 4 guys maybe that were on the staff with Jeff.
Jack Curtis being one of them, the
Jack
defensive
being
coordinator.
one of them.
Yeah.
And now the current head coach of Georgia Southern, Chad Lunsford, was with Jeff Monken there before. So, he'd come back. He's got a place in Savannah. And then, but I knew Jeff before. He and I would talk a lot during 1AA playoff time. He was at Georgia Southern, and I was at Sam Houston State. And so we'd talk about, different teams who were getting ready to play. And then one of my coaches here was a GA with Jeff, and that's when I first met Jeff, probably in the 80s, I'm guessing. Don Landholm. They worked, they were GAs together at Arizona State years and years ago. So I've known Jeff a long time. Got a lot of respect for what he does and how he runs a program. He's from that Paul Johnson family too. And Paul Johnson's a former Georgia Southern coach. So it all is intertwined. If you ask the people at Georgia Southern, everything goes back to Georgia Southern somehow.
What is it like, by the way? Is it a peaceful transition of power, to borrow a phrase? Is it Coach Fritz gets help from Coach Monken when he comes into Georgia Southern? Is it case by case? How does it work when one coach replaces another?
I called Jeff before I took the job and just quizzed him up and down, and because I valued his opinion. About going in, who better to ask than the guy that had been the head coach there for, I don't know, he'd been there 4 or 5 years, I guess. And he gave me some good advice and told me some things that were spot on. But then you got to go, you got to go in and you got to do, there's some things that, luckily there's a lot of philosophy that we share, but there were some things that, that I changed that fit my personality more so than Jeff's. And I'm sure he had to do the same thing when he went up to Army.
I guess that begs the question, is there anyone in particular that you leaned on their counsel when you came to Tulane, and what this place could become if you felt like it was coached up in a fashion that you believed in?
I didn't know anybody on staff, and I knew a few people that had been here before as an assistant, and I talked to them. I'll tell you, a good friend of mine, Greg McMahon, he's over at LSU now, and he was a special teams coach with the Saints for about 11 years. I did talk to Greg quite a bit because he knew the previous head coach. He'd been here quite a bit, and so that was part of it. It's kind of a leap of faith. I'd never recruited much in Louisiana, and had never worked at a private school before. So there were some things that were totally different, and there was some, on the job training that I had to use.
Was there anything in particular that he may have told you about the potential here, about the positive, the opportunity that was in front of you with a chance like this?
He just thought that there's an opportunity to win here with, it just is, the one. And I've taken over quite a few Georgia Southern was the only place I'd ever gone to that had a rich history before I got there. And they had, we were making the transition from 1AA to Division I. So that was really the challenge going there. But, it just, when I sat back and looked at it, you had a great location to recruit. You had a great school, and then they just built the new stadium. And, I didn't want to dredge up, if you looked at the previous years, that was only going to get you depressed.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to be the case,
Understood.
And so I looked at the positives and saw that there were some great teams that they'd had in the past, just had not been able to do it consistently. And part of that is, keeping the same people around for a period of time.
Hey, look, I'll say it, for what it's worth. I think the consistency that's been established under your watch here at Tulane is notable and significant. Anyway, here's a stat that I found about your friend Jeff Monken that I thought was quite interesting. He's the first Army coach to have a winning record since Coach Jim Young, who's in the College Football Hall of Fame. And I think if I was doing my research correctly, actually coached Michigan in the Rose Bowl one year when Bo Schembechler could not coach. I thought that was a pretty remarkable way of looking at the tenure for Coach Monken at Army. First winning coach at that place since Jim Young.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Jeff's done a tremendous job there. I mean, and something that was valuable for him is he'd been an assistant for Paul Johnson at Navy for a long time. So he's seen how a successful winning academy had operated.
Give us some keys for this game against Army. Let's talk on the field. We've talked big picture. It's a program that obviously is, depending on the poll that you look at, in the top 25. They've got a tremendous defense. They've changed quarterbacks. I don't know. Give us the overall scouting report on the opportunity that Tulane has in front of it today.
Well, they're very well coached. They play extremely hard. They're very physical. What you expect out of an academy team. They've got incredible depth. Some people don't realize it, but there are, some restrictions for them recruiting. But they've, I think they got 180 some dudes on the roster. They've got their own prep school, which is located on campus.
Yep.
Which is, I think half the guys that start for them come from the prep school.
Crazy. And
they've got some different standards to get in there. So they've got it set up. I mean, it's, I had a friend of mine that coached in Navy one time. He said, heck, man, if you got unlimited scholarships, surely you're going to hit on some, and
yeah, the percentages are bad.
They do,
Yep.
And so they've got a lot of guys. I've never been to academy practice, but I heard they have two groups, going at once in the spring. So you got two full teams practicing down here at this end, two full teams practicing down at the other end, and you're just getting rep. And so these guys learn how to do this offense, defense, kicking game, in their sleep. And but they're very well coached, very, very, very disciplined, don't beat themselves, and therefore you can't beat yourself either. You got to play smart and not turn the ball over and get some takeaways and stay away from big penalties and play smart. And that's what we got to do.
Best game that they, at least most difficult opponent that they've gone up against, and maybe one of their more competitive ball games was against Cincinnati, a team that is challenging for the college football playoff. I think that was 24-10, the final score at the time. What was the most notable thing you saw from the way that Army was able to manage a team like Cincinnati?
I thought they really frustrated Cincinnati up their offense. They just there wasn't any holes. Did a great job tackling, and I think a few times Cincinnati got a little frustrated with taking a 5-yard throw, and they forced some balls downfield. And there's some interceptions and takeaways by Army, allowed them to stay in the game. The same thing you saw in all the other games. That's the one we've looked at the most. That's a high quality opponent that they really played well against.
Coach, I'll leave you on this question. I think Army has played in the territory of 4 quarterbacks this season. Some of that is an injury situation. And again, I know it's a triple option, so it's not the same thing as a spread offense, and you've got to worry about a particular quarterback, but it still matters in that offense. So how do you prep for a team that has played a number of different quarterbacks, and you might see a couple of quarterbacks on Saturday?
We'll break it down, and there's probably a little bit of difference between what one guy does and another guy does, but they're going to do what they do. And it doesn't matter if you or I are the quarterback. That's what they're going to.
It would matter a little if I was the quarterback. I promise you it would matter a little if I was the quarterback.
It'd matter big if I was too, but they've got a system. They're going to do that system, and I'm sure they tweak it, and maybe one guy does a little bit, runs these plays a little bit more than these other plays, and vice versa with the other guy. But they're gonna run their system.
Coach, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Roll wave.
Big thanks to Coach Fritz. As always, coming up shortly, we'll talk with the voice of the Black Knights, Rich DeMarco. Some good conversation there about both the team as well as sort of the season that they've been through, rebuilding their entire schedule as a football independent, and the fact that the Army-Navy game is going to be on campus for the first time since 1943. Here with Gus Kattengell and Jimmy Ordno now. Guys, before we talk about football, I've got a list of sponsors that I'm going to get through, and then I would like you guys to say something nice about one of the sponsors. We've got Brian Subaru as a sponsor, Capital One, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana, Acadian Ambulance, Biso Towboat, Hotard Motor Coaches, the Louisiana Lottery, Children's Hospital of New Orleans, Mandeville Seafood, and Crystal Clear Imaging. Take your pick. Say something nice about one of the sponsors.
Gus, I'll give you the honors for sure.
Well, it's so funny because as he's going through the list of sponsors, literally I'm going through, okay, well, you went through most of the ones that were either one way, shape, or form actually have ties in, right? Mandeville Seafood. How many times during tailgates, I might have tested. I might have tried to see how that shrimp and catfish
Sure, a little sample. Yes, quality control.
Sample.
Quality control.
Exactly. Who hasn't been on a Hotard bus on a road trip, either in baseball, basketball, or heading over to the airport? So it's almost, Terry's like my dad. I know
that is a relatable comment.
Exactly. So as you're going through them all, yeah, absolutely. Brian Subaru, it's literally, I bike past it when I'm on my bike here in my neighborhood with Carver and Anna. It's 2 blocks away. So I always go there, and I know the Graf gets his car serviced there because he has a Brian Subaru. So yeah, as you're going through the list, I can go through each and every thing. I pretty much know. I haven't driven a tugboat though. If they want to give me a little try there to get on the river, and give me like a donut or something, I'd be good with that.
That's dangerous. Jimmy, am I going to let you off the hook on this one?
No, that's good. Look, Biso Towing, those are our friends, the Slaytons. We may not be talking now if it wasn't for the Slaytons and their efforts in support of Tulane athletics. So big hats off to them. And I don't know the first thing about having ships towed on the river, but I bet you they're the best at it. And,
I've been told that they're the power on the Mississippi, guys.
There you go. And Children's Hospital, when I had my only one kid and even the tiniest thing went wrong, we would quickly go get checked in and make sure our little baby was all right. Now a kid can suffer concussion and 3 broken bones and we'll consider a hospital. So, things change as you have more numbers, but Children's is always very responsive no matter our level of need.
Fantastic. All right, let's talk football. We'll talk quickly about East Carolina. and then a little bit about this game on Saturday that kicks off at 11, which, by the way, I'm waiting for that game to get moved from ESPN Plus to, I don't know, ESPN or ABC, considering the number of games that are dropping like flies this week. But let's start with East Carolina. The best thing that you guys saw against the Pirates a week ago was what?
It was the overall. Once again, the defense played really well, and the pass rush particularly was good. And East Carolina was a better passing attack than what we saw against Temple, and so they made a few big plays. But the overall balance or integration of our offense, the progression we see now as Coach Hall has developed more confidence in Michael Pratt, and just the no-win situation, we were able to work East Carolina's defense through, they came out, we spread them out and took what they gave us. And what they gave us early on were a bunch of throws because they were worried about a rushing attack, had too many guys in the box, crowded the line of scrimmage. So we took it, we throw, and threw that on the field for the first touchdown. And then as they continued, to start doing that, we went with heavier personnel, and the run game gashes were something we saw like when we play FCS opponents, frankly, at some point. I mean, it was a gaudy rushing average. And I mean, it was a big run after big run. And guys, I mean, that's not, they made it look really easy. It's not that easy. And the reason why it went so well and we got so many big runs, first of all, we kind of took their soul as the game conceded, as the game proceeded. But it was because you put them in the no-win situation of, if you bring in extra guys to try to take this away, guys, we'll just pop you over the head again, right? We'll just beat you throwing the ball. But so when you made them play straight up, and they couldn't match us when they were playing us with straight numbers, and you saw the result in the run game.
One thing, Gus, that I want to underscore before you jump in here is you talk about the fact that Coach Hall and Michael Pratt are developing more of a chemistry and more of a trust. And Jimmy, you're talking about going down the field in that first drive, pass. Michael Pratt told us after the game, and he reiterated it this week in the press conferences, is that initial sequence was not scripted just like that. You talk so often about we script the first 10 or 15 plays. Now, they scripted him, and they certainly had checks involved, but they checked a lot of those plays, to Jimmy's point, because of what East Carolina was giving them defensively. And that's the film study. That's the confidence and the trust between an offensive coordinator. And quite frankly, he's still a young quarterback, the freshman, but those growth points are pretty cool to see. Michael Pratt said, I think of the 70 some odd plays that they had, about 50 or 60 were checks. Now, I don't necessarily know how difficult that is, but the communication there has grown between those two, and the trust to get from one play to another play has obviously developed. So that's, I think that's an encouraging sign. Go ahead, Gus.
Yeah, it's interesting. You guys went into the depth of it. I think the thing that really stood out to me was the balance. And hearing you, Andrew, touch on how they're adjusting, how you want a game plan or how you're going, you can tend to do that, right, guys? And Jimmy, you know better than me, when your quarterback and your team and your players have snaps under you and now all of a sudden start slowing down. That's the one thing that Michael Pratt said that really stood out to me after the ECU game when he spoke with media afterwards, is that it's slowing down. And you all know this better than anybody. When athletes say that, that means the game is processing in their head. And then all of a sudden now you're reacting. You're using the talent that's given to you. You're just making plays. You're not thinking. And yes, of course, you have to think out there, make the right reads and decisions. But you know what I mean, Jimmy, right? Where you're just reacting. You know what you're doing. You've studied it. You've seen it in film. You know what to expect. And now you know how to make those corrections and adjustments. And now when you have players that can do that, fellas, to me as a coaching staff, you can do more things. And now the playbook's not as limited. And now you can make flies adjustments. And Jimmy, you're an offensive lineman. Now your quarterback can audible, or the line can adjust, and that just opens up so much more. That's really honestly the one thing that stood out about everything else. There were some really good performances we can get into, obviously, but that just stood out. You threw the ball, you ran the ball, your quarterback made adjustments, and it just seemed like he was under control, and this offense had a rhyme and reason to it. And that's awesome to see moving forward.
I asked Michael Pratt. No, go ahead, Jimmy. Sorry.
Yeah, just to top off that point, because I think it's a good one, and one I left off was you can talk about balance and all these things all you want, but what kills the offense oftentimes is the negative play. And, you run for a first down, and we've seen it this year. Run for a first down, and then, bam, take a sack on the first down pass. You want to throw on first down because it's a great throwing opportunity. But those negative plays are the reasons why you skew conservative. You want to avoid that negative play. But once you gain confidence that you're going to avoid that, because one thing we saw in this game, guys, was a communication between a center and quarterback and the rest of the pass protection unit, the 5 guys up front as well as the back. It was maybe some of the best blitz pickup work we've seen out of a Tulane unit in quite some time. I mean, it was par excellence. And that was a huge part of this. You have the confidence to be free and easy because you have confidence that your guys are going to get in the right protection and get a hat on a hat and give the quarterback an opportunity to succeed.
The one thing I was going to say about Michael Pratt, and then I want to come back to what you just said too, Jimmy, was I asked Michael Pratt, we're recording this on Wednesday. I asked him today, I said, do you like the film room? Do you like the film study? And he gave me an emphatic yes. Like, not just like, oh, it's good. No, I like going in there. I like figuring out defenses. And I would suspect if you really delved into it, the number of quarterbacks that Coach Fritz has had, in part because of the style that he was running. But to have a quarterback with that sort of enthusiasm for studying defenses, Michael Pratt might be the first one with that sort of charisma for it in quite some time. And that's not to take away from the other quarterbacks and their athleticism. But again, as a freshman, to hear that, it's encouraging. And then to see it translate on the field is something pretty special too. And to circle back about your point about the offensive line as well, Jimmy, look, that line and that unit has gone through some transition this season with Joey Claybrook going out for a little while. Josh Remetich is getting close to coming back. Caleb Thomas steps in, but then he gets hurt. Sincere Haynesworth got banged up a little bit against East Carolina, and Corey Dublin had to play center. That's something we'll have to watch for Army. I guess for you, Jimmy, how impressive is that the unit has been able to establish that level of communication despite the fact that the shuffling has been fairly constant this season?
Oh, look, I mean, it's maybe the most impressive thing I've seen out of this team this year, maybe with the exception of Michael Pratt's just rapid development, is just the resilience that they've shown. I mean, Timothy Shafter is a walk-on, our former walk-on, who got his first start at guard. And, that's unheard of at Tulane. Other schools, they have a history of walk-on, public schools particularly can have a history of walk-ons coming in and becoming starters. It's really hard for Tulane to get good quality walk-ons because of the price that they have to pay to come in. And so It really requires some special circumstances. And then Coach Fritz's, immense credit, he has been able to identify some contributors from the walk-on ranks. But to have a starter at guard is significant. And he did such a wonderful job, holding the rope there. And then next to him is a guy who, if they're paying attention, and if sports writers who vote on these things know what they're looking at, is a clear all-conference guy in Sincere Haynesworth. Some of the blocks that he is being asked to make have a degree of difficulty. You always want to run with angles, numbers, and graphs, but you don't always get that. And there were plays in that game where Sincere, the reason the run is sprung is because he is reaching a guy who's shaded to the play side, and Sincere is able to move his body and leverage that guy and seal him on the inside to give the alley. I could think of a Cam Carroll run, one of the long gainers, in which, it's just a hard block to make. It's not a down block where the angles are on your side. It's a reaching block that he's able to move his body and use his strength in order to essentially get the result of a down block, where he's pinning the guy inside and allowing the running back to run off his hip. I mean, those are things that just, you don't have a lot of guys that can do what he can do. from a physical standpoint of that position, and that's just been a huge thing. So when you take him and then, you're looking at what Ben Newton's doing as a guy who's been a part-time off and on starter at guard and doing a great job at tackle. I mean, you just really can't say enough about that unit and how as they've shuffled bodies in, they've just continued to get better and better as the course of the year has gone on.
Gus, listen to the enthusiasm of Jimmy talking about offensive linemen, huh?
It's funny because we spent so long, and I don't know, over a decade, man. I've been doing Tulane football, and Jimmy and you and I have been doing pregame shows and everything. It's so funny to sort of see this transition. I can clearly remember, doing this podcast a couple of weeks ago saying, I'm wondering if the transition is going to start to take place of where you're going to start seeing throwing the football being sort of the key. And, the pass setting up the run. Coach Fritz said that on my talk show this week. And yet at the same time, a point that we're going to talk about in our pregame show this week, Andrew, is the fact that for the third straight week, a different back led the way in the backfield, which is sort of like what Tulane has sort of had where you had a double or triple barrel backfield. So, it starts with the line. And I know Jimmy, Coach Fritz has talked so often and so many times about trying to get that part of the game and this program going so you can then have the backs and the receivers and the quarterbacks and all of that. So, man, I can see why you're pumped up because Coach Fritz has told us at the beginning of the year he thought they were going to be better. It just takes time. And, quite honestly, look, you transitioned to quarterback, right? I mean, you went whatever spring you had through a I don't know summer into I guess so fall with one quarterback, and now you have a different one, and he plays differently. So, better than me. I've heard offensive linemen say adjusting to different running backs is different, much less a quarterback. So I just think you're seeing a team grow together, and you can only do that on game action, man.
You're right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the sum is greater than the individual parts, Andrew and Gus, and that's what you're seeing here. That's what you see sometimes with a group up front because they're the only group where there's 5 people working together on every single play. And when you see those 5 actually working together and communicating the way we're seeing now, you just don't get that every year at every program. It's a really special thing when you get it, and I think we're seeing that out of that group of 8 to 9 guys that have contributed, that room is clearly a really tight room and really doing a good job talking to one another.
Yep. Hats off to Coach Kennedy. The last thing I want to touch on before we turn the page to Army real quick is, guys, congratulations to Patrick Johnson. He's a fun player to watch when he's able to just pin his ears back and rush the quarterback, 3 sacks, all-time record at Tulane. And I tweeted this, and I'm just kind of curious your perspective on Patrick's career and the accomplishment that he was able to pick up. But I really do think he's a good barometer of what it means to play for Coach Willie Fritz at Tulane and what Coach Fritz has been able to establish now in his 5th year. He's a guy that you go out, he's somewhat overlooked, he signs late, but you evaluate the talent, you find a good fit, you find good character, the kid works his tail off, the coaches coach him up, and you turn around and he's one of your best players in program history. I really do feel like he's a great barometer for what Tulane football is under Coach Fritz. So just a congratulations to Patrick.
Oh, absolutely, man. Look, there's some huge players, really, really good players, Tulane Hall of Famers that are on that list behind him now. And, last year was a down year for Patrick from probably not inside the locker room because I think all of his teammates knew he played through a lot of pain and some injuries. But, he's back on track, sort of back to where his sophomore year was, where he's on pace, for a double-digit sack season. And you see the impact even when he doesn't get the sack at the end of the day, where he's forcing. Jeffrey Johnson's picked up a couple sacks this year because of Patrick and Cam, right? Where they're forcing the quarterback to step up into Jeffrey's waiting mitt. So you make impacts not just through the sack numbers, but by the overall pressure you're creating and playing the run well and all that. And Patrick is, played with good leverage and technique throughout his career, which has allowed him to be just a sound player. So it's not a lot of giving with the take. You're not having to do a lot of taking the good with the bad with Patrick. It's mostly just taking the good with the good, which is a great thing. And hats off to him for sticking it out and getting to the point where he holds this really hard record to get.
Andrew, I think that's a wonderful, I guess, way to put to why it's important to get those kind of players. And that's what you're looking for, right? I want to almost say in that same podcast that we brought up about the transition of offense, you and Jimmy brought up recruiting and what kind of player and junior college transfer. And I was taken aback in a very good way where I just had a smile. Right? I even played the bite for Coach Fritz on Tuesday when he came on my show before. I had him give his thoughts on how important that record was for him. I loved hearing how happy Patrick Johnson was to do that. And to just hear him say, I don't think about records. It's about team first. But, man, that was a cool accomplishment. Like, in this day and age, and guys, you know this, we can become very cynical. And I almost expected. I almost teased my intern this week because he became a Braves fan. He didn't have an MLB team, guys. I'm a Cub guy. Daniel Salerson, Pelicans Radio Network. He's a Braves guy, Grass a Dodger guy. So we were trying to recruit him to root for a team this year. And I teased Daniel coming on. I said, the Braves didn't win the World Series. I hear that my intern's going to go into the transfer portal to try to find a team to root for, because I almost feel like that's what we become sort of used to, right? Jimmy, if you don't start, if things don't go the way that you think when you get recruited, literally after 1 year or 2 years there, you have players bailing or leaving. And it's the Power Five. LSU's dealt with it this year. And it's refreshing to hear a player, and to what Andrew said, that wanted to be there, once he got there, wanted to excel, and is happy to be there. And those are the special boxes you have to check in order to play at Tulane. And to have somebody like that, we should talk about them, we should celebrate them, and we should, let people know outside of this area about him, because that's a special kid, and he should be happy about what he did. That's not easy to do.
You talk about guys, elevating themselves up the all AAC teams. Sincere Hainsworth should be a first teamer. Patrick Johnson's pretty darn close to breaking through. He's been a 2-time second teamer. Be great to see if he could finish off his Tulane career, probably as a first teamer. Let's turn the page to Army. Guys, we've had this triple option offense conversation all the darn time, playing Army last year, playing Navy just about every single season. So it's not a new conversation, but it is the dominant conversation of this week, because that offense can, if you let it, impose its will on a ball game. So open-ended question, what do you want to see from the Wave this weekend that will help them get their first victory over a top 25 team since 1984?
Well, we need to see, first it all starts with how you defend their option attack. And, we see what we saw against Navy in the first half throughout for 60 minutes. I think we're going to be happy with where we end up. I mean, Army presents a challenge from a run standpoint when we're on offense, because, unlike the team we played last year, we kind of ran through pretty good. They've been pretty stout against the run this year. Cincinnati, I think, which is one of the better rushing attacks around, average, I believe, less than 3 yards of carry against them. So that's going to be a major challenge. Now, we are versatile, as we talked about earlier. We can, if they overcommit to stopping the run, we have an answer for that. Early season Cincinnati, before Ritter has really come on here, really didn't. They really leaned hard on their run game and did not rely on Ritter to throw it too much. I think Tulane's not going to be as shy. I think much like last week, we're going to check into passes if the looks are not there for a run. But that is something I worry about. But, that's ancillary. I think the offense will mostly take care of itself in its limited possessions, as long as the defense does a stellar job containing the option.
Now, I think what's interesting is hearing the players this week talk about how there's similarities to Navy and there's not. And, Coach Fritz saying, hey, look, these guys will go into the shotgun. And that's, quote, it's a whole different animal. So it's odd, Andrew, that it'll be something to keep an eye on as we call the game, is that here's a team that averages 300 yards a game. So they're a running football team. But yeah, we'll add that element in that shotgun. And Jimmy, I want to say it was last year when they almost upset Michigan in the Big House, where they did that, right? You would see them go into the shotgun, and it was only like 5 to 10 plays, but They would get a big passing play out of that. But you know what? I think at the end of the day, it just goes to that old adage, and I know it sounds so cliche-ish, but it is. This Tulane, go out there and just worry about yourself. You should have the talent. You should have the ability to do so. And more importantly, if you can put up points on offense, because now you can throw the football. That's why I went back to my initial thoughts on the game about ECU. We're balanced. Obviously, every coach, every game, you want that balance. But if you can show multiple backs can shoulder the load, per se, in the backfield, if you can show that your quarterback can make throws, you go back to Andrew UCF, first play of the game on offense for Tulane was a bomb. It was an incomplete pass, but it immediately let people know we're going to throw it and we're going to take our chances. So that's something that's interesting to me because you look at it from this perspective, and I don't know if it matters anything or not, but the wise guys have Tulane, at the time of us doing this, favored by 5.5 against the team that's 6 wins and 1 loss. So people think that Tulane has the talent and should win. So I think we go out there and take care of business. And I go back to what Nick Anderson sort of said earlier this week. He said, look, we kind of feel momentum is building and we want to finish strong. And you go back to how Willie Fritz and his teams the last 2 seasons have finished. And for some guys, his team
Sam's got something.
closes out well. And that's a good thing because it means that you're playing your best football towards the end. And you can't do that, I guess, if you're not making adjustments, if your players don't buy in, if you don't overcome adversity, and you don't want it. And that's what it kind of comes down to, right, Jimmy? When that D lineman is in front of you, man, do you want it or not? You're going to push him around, he's going to push you around. See what I just did there? Come on.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, look, they're going to play hard, really hard, all game. They're not going to quit no matter what, whatever the score is. And, the officials are going to not call very many things on them. So, I mean,
what's Steve Line? Our boys love America too.
Yeah. I mean, look, the officials just didn't drape themselves in the flag before the kickoff. Look, yeah. I love the troops too. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
I know. Steve's used that line before.
I would like a fair call game, but it is what it is. So you got to be ready for it.
Yeah, I will say that Tulane has played more physical the past couple of weeks, and that will need to continue against Army. Hey, here's my stat as we get out of here. Tell me what Tulane does defensively on first down and second down, and I'll tell you how I feel about the football game. Last year against Army, when the Black Knights were in a 3rd down and 5 or shorter, they converted all 8 of those attempts, either on 3rd down or 4th down, because they go for it quite a bit on 4th down. So if Tulane can keep them in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, which they did a handful of times last year, Army's percentages go way down. So manage first down and second down defensively, and I think Tulane can be just fine against the Black Knights. Guys, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You got it, Andrew. Always a pleasure. We look forward to Saturday.
All right, let's turn things over now to the Black Knights play-by-play broadcaster, Rich DeMarco. All right, Rich, thanks so much for taking a few moments to talk about the Army Black Knights, a team that is ranked 25th in the country based on the coaches poll. Rich, I'm going to throw the dart at the center of the dartboard to start off. Who's your quarterback?
That's a great question. And I'll tell you, it shows the depth of this team, the way the quarterback position really hasn't missed a beat all year. Going into the year, Jabari Laws, who emerged as the starting quarterback last year, had an injury late in the year, was not 100% of the start of the year. He's still working his way back, though. We're here into November. It was Christian Anderson, Jamel Jones. Then they got banged up, went down to using Maurice Ballon, Christian Parrish a little bit during games when those players had gotten banged up and late in games. But pretty much all 4 of them ended up not being 100% leading into the UTSA game. So it led to, Andrew, as you're referring to, what's become now a 2-headed quarterback monster of Cade Ballard and Tyre Tyler, who prior to that UTSA game had a combined 1 collegiate snap of experience. And that was Ballard on the final play of the Louisiana Monroe game, handing off to the fullback Anthony Adkins to run out the clock. So needless to say, the UTSA game went glowingly well for both of them, really cycling in and out by drives, even during drives, coming in with different plays. That continued the next week against Mercer. So health is coming back for Anderson, Jones, just expectedly since they've been out over a month. But Ballard and Tyler have had the majority of the reps here. So, hey, the coaches, it's going to be a game time decision, not going to decide there. I would expect we're going to see Cade Ballard, Tyler, and then, hey, maybe appearances by Jamel Jones. Who knows? Maybe Christian Anderson, if in fact they've gotten back to the point where they can contribute.
I don't mean this overly simplistically, but with the triple option, how much does it matter to you guys? And look, again, it's not dismissively, because we saw what certain quarterbacks in these systems can do. Think of a Malcolm Perry, with all due respect, from Navy a year ago. They matter, but in this system, has it been able to soften the blow of needing to transition this number of quarterbacks?
Well, you make a great point, because Jeff Monken, offensive coordinator Brent Davis, will tell you, the first thing this offense has to do is establish the fullback. And if you don't establish the fullback, it doesn't matter if you have Jamel Holloway, a 1985, running the option. The offense isn't going to be able to do what it's going to need to do in order to control the clock and win the game. Now, of course, the quarterback comes into play, because if the defense elects to take away the fullback and make it challenging for the fullback, the quarterback's got to be able to get to the edge and pitch, or be able to give you a little bit of a throwing threat. Now, the two things I think we've seen is when Cade Ballard has thrown the ball, the few times he's shown a good arm and had, 2 completions. They both gone for 53 yards and one going for a touchdown to Tyrell Robinson. And having Tyrell Robinson on the edge, along with Tyler, the way he runs the option and he's able to run the football, has given that other option, no pun intended, for this offense. So if you try and take away that fullback, there's going to be other things that can hurt you for a defense. But the reality is, if you had a load of injuries at the fullback position, you probably would see it more in how it would affect the overall offense than in the quarterback position, because fullback is the most important thing this offense needs to establish.
All right, let's talk about the defense, because they've been able to put up some special numbers. Obviously, with the way that the offense works, the defense is going to have some advantages with just the total number of snaps that it faces being less than most teams. Having said that, it appears on face value that the first-year defensive coordinator, Nate Woody, has done a really nice job with your unit. What has he added to this defense this year?
Back into the attack and really just forcing turnovers, getting after the quarterback. I think there's been a little more help last year. The entire team was banged up, it seemed like, from the start of the year. But the ability to be around the football, force the turnovers. John Radigan, someone who hadn't started a game, really was a special teams player his first 3 years. His first collegiate start in the opener against Middle Tennessee. And Andrew, has consistently graded out week after week as one of the top linebackers in the country. Him and Eric Smith, who's been a tackle machine, have really solidified that linebacker spot, which was really the heart of the Army teams in 2016, 2017, and 2018. The ability to get to the quarterback, like I said, and a secondary, which there have been injuries, but there's guys back there, there's backups that have played a ton of snaps. So I think you have real good experience in the secondary. I think the linebackers have really come on, and the ability to get to the quarterback being healthy, which is obviously the trademark of this Nate Woody defense, have been able to force turnovers and flip the field on several occasions.
Tell me about the Cincinnati game. That's obviously the most difficult opponent that you guys have faced so far this season. Held them to a season-low 24 points. What was working the best that day? Again, I get it. It's a loss. So it's weird to be talking about a loss. But it's notable to hold a team that is at least considered at the moment as a dark horse for the college football playoff to their season-low point total. So what was going that day against Cincinnati?
It was the Army defense, and it's interesting you mentioned that, Andrew, because I've made it a point whenever
watch Sham's video when
watch a
video.
lot of college football when I come home from games, when I'm on the road, on the flight home, whatever it is. And I've made it a point to watch Cincinnati as much as I can. And a couple things. Army's defense did a really good job stopping the Cincinnati run. Cincinnati's really been able to control the games by running and setting up Desmond Ridder, and Army was able to do a number of things against the run that other teams haven't been able to do. And then Ridder was just not on. I mean, I've seen him in games where he's been on, dropping the football exactly where he needed to, scrambling out of the pocket. He was just off that entire game, to the point where now Cincinnati was coming off a win the previous week over an FCS team. We were thinking, well, wait a minute, is Cincinnati really this good, this potential dark horse group of 5 team that could burst its way into the top 10. But Army's defense did a great job in that game. And it's amazing it was, you say, only a 14-point game, but holding Cincinnati to its lowest point total. I believe that's still the closest game Cincinnati has played this year. And the Army offense had several problems in that game, moving the football, converting on third downs, penalties, all the things that Army will tell you before the game they can't let happen to Army, and still to be within a couple of touchdowns, I thought was impressive. And you say still a loss, but the Army defense really, I think, showed a lot in that game and actually scored the only touchdown for Army in that game on the third play of the game. Jabari Moore batted down an option pitch and ran it back for a touchdown.
Just to round out your point there, it still is the closest game. They torched Austin Peay, which is no surprise. It was no contest against SMU. It was no contest against Memphis and Houston for Cincinnati. And then the next closest would have been the USF game, which was 28-7. So far this season, the Army game has been the most competitive for Cincinnati. Hey, how much did your schedule have to get reworked this season?
Entirely. And it's funny, you look at the beginning of the season, and Army had come to the point where they lost every game, I believe, with the exception of the Tulane game, the Air Force game, and the Navy game. Rice was supposed to be on the schedule. Oklahoma was supposed to be on the schedule. Princeton was supposed to be on the schedule. And it was having really to blow it up and build it back together. And Bob Beretta, the Senior Associate AD of Strategic Initiatives, working with Mike Buddy, our athletic director, Jeff Monk, and the head coach, really to build it on the fly. And I think the key, and we've seen it the past couple of weeks, we've seen it across the nation with so many games being postponed, canceled due to COVID. I mean, the key was getting as many games as we could early in the season and, playing in, and you know this, Andrew, because Tulane was doing the same thing, playing in September when a lot of other conferences and teams weren't playing in September, hoping to wait and make it safer. It's turned out, as we've gotten later in the year, those are the teams that maybe are only going to play a couple games this year. So to have no games, it's funny, to have no games August 1st, essentially, and to have 7 games under your belt by October 24th was pretty impressive. Now it stayed at 7 the past couple of weeks, but hopefully, we get this one number 8 on Saturday and get on the field and enjoy a good one.
Any sense from the program of the challenges of having essentially 2 bye weeks coming into this game against Tulane?
It's interesting because the first scheduled bye. So if you look at it, right, it was a bye week leading into the Air Force game. So obviously that first week was an expected bye, and Army was able to work on Air Force, get 2 weeks, of work into Air Force. The Air Force game wasn't postponed until midday last Thursday. So really, rest-wise, Army has, that's good for Army leading into this game against Tulane. But it's not like Army has had a ton more time to prepare for the Green Wave than they would have. Really, it's another day and a half maybe if they used part of Thursday's practice, then got out on Friday. So it's not like you're looking at it as a double bye leading into what you'd expect that extra prep would be for a team like Tulane, which we've consistently heard and talked about, maybe next to Cincinnati, the most talented team on Army's schedule. And I know a team Jeff Monken has been very clear to say, has had the Black Knights number the past couple of years and shares just a tremendous respect for Willie Fritz and that coaching staff.
All right, Rich, I'll leave you on this one. Outside of our game, outside of the season for Army has brought us to the point, obviously, the challenges of 2020, where the Army-Navy game is not going to be held in a traditional quote-unquote venue that brings so much fanfare. It's going to be back on campus at Michie Stadium. And then I think only a small number of people, you can fill me in on the detail on who can actually be there, but give me a sense of what it means to have this game, Army-Navy, back on campus in West Point for the first time in, I don't know, is it 60, 70 years? It's a tremendous number. What's that game back on campus mean?
Yeah, first time since 1943, 77 years ago during World War II, there was a game played at Annapolis, a game played at West Point. It just means everything. And I'll tell you, this is my 17th year at West Point, my 11th calling the play-by-play. And I, expect to be at West Point a long time. And I'm very conscious that's a once in a lifetime thing that I'm going to be able to be part of. And, to have it at home, I do think that puts some pressure to win the game for Army in some ways where, it's right here. I don't know how much of a home field advantage it's going to be, other than maybe using your locker room and having your field, because it's going to be split down the middle, cadets, midshipmen there, maybe if any extra spectators are there, it would just be, families, or just very, very few people are going to be able to attend the game. And that's still not even determinative of who could even be there outside of cadets, and midshipmen. And I think it's just something where, you're going to see it, and it's because of COVID this is happening. So maybe at this point, it's not surprising that a game like that is being played at West Point. I was just saying this to someone the other day, where, this game moving to West Point because of 2020 is like, oh, well, that makes sense. But I don't think, 5-10 years down the line, we're not going to realize how special at that point it would have been to have the game here at West Point. So I'm going to try to savor every moment leading up to it that day. Going to get some pictures by the midfield logo at Mikey Stadium if I can, and really just be conscious of how awesome an event it is, and how awesome it is to have that event at West Point, as we like to say, the greatest place to watch college football.
Hey, look, it was my first trip up to Mikey Stadium a season ago. And yes, there are some tremendous cathedrals of college football, whether it's the Horseshoe, a place that I used to work in, Blacksburg Lane Stadium. There are tremendous cathedrals for college football, but Mikey Stadium is pretty special. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I truly enjoyed it. Hey, Rich, I appreciate your time today. We'll see you down at Yeoman Stadium on Saturday.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, Andrew.
Okay, that concludes the Willie Fritz Show for today. Once again, thanks for joining us here on Sports Talk. We are live, so we're going to go over some news headlines for a few minutes, and then we'll wrap up the show. So once again, thanks for joining us. Also, we'll probably have maybe Thursday night football, or maybe high school football later. Probably we'll do that. So let's go ahead and switch this out, and we will begin our news headlines. I'm going to do that. So we're going to go over to ESPN, go over some news headlines there. Okay, let's go over the give a Masters update. Masters is going on right now, so we'll give you that update going on. We'll give you the leaderboards as we go. The Master Tournament going on, so I'm going to give you that update as we go through the okay, let's go through the Masters update right now. I have it up on the screen. Webb Simpson is 5 under par, so once again he is 5 under par today. Also,
you've seen a lot of players up there. Remember the famous.
Okay, Lee Westwood is also 5 under par. He is tied for first. That's in position now. Tied for third is Lewis Overzine. He is 4 under par. Paul Casey is also third place right now. Tiger Woods is 3 under par in this matchup today. Isaki Masa Ainla is 2 under par going in. Also is tied for 6 is Scotty Schaefer. Also Henrik Stevenson is 2 under par. So the leaderboard once again the only one is only American that's the Simpson. He is tied for first with Westwood in the Masters today. So once again, the Masters will go through Sunday. So that is on. It will be on ESPN Plus. So let's go through some more headlines. Okay, let's go through. Let's talk about Tony La Russa. Once again, as you all know, Tony La Russa legal proceedings play out. So Tony La Russa was charged with DUI on his. He was arrested, charged with DUI. He is a Hall of Fame coach, but the Chicago White Sox organization saying let the proceedings play out. I think they should, because if he did do these DUI situations, I think he should be held accountable. So I think that's the fullest right there. So you'll see it. I think he should absolutely be held 100% accountable, because what? There's no room for that stuff right there. If you go do a DUI or something like that, or go break into somebody's house, and you're an NFL player or major league player, doesn't give you any leverage. It does not give you any leverage. So I think if he has to face his criminal charges, then let him do it. So once again, this is from ESPN. Go to ESPN.com. Okay, let's put this up on the screen. Okay, Ben Roethlisberger can't practice, but Steelers preparing as he will play, so that's most likely what will happen. So once again, this is from Brooke Pryor. You can reach her at ESPN. So most likely he will, hopefully he will play this Sunday against the Bengals. So once again, that's against ESPN. Go to ESPN.com. Also, once again, a death in the Kentucky family. Kentucky offensive line coach John Sherman dies from cancer. So once again, please keep him in your thoughts and prayers tonight. So that's unfortunate for the Kentucky family to lose a family member. So once again, John Sherman, he is the offensive line coach for Kentucky. He passes away at 45. So once again, please keep him in your thoughts and prayers tonight as you. Okay, once again, Super Bowl. Talk about the Super Bowl, the weekend. The R&B group is going to be performing at the Super Bowl this year, so that's going to be on February 7th. So the weekend is going to be the headline performer at this year's Super Bowl for the halftime show. So once again, this is from ESPN News Service. For the ESPN News Service. Okay, we still talked about this. We talked about this yesterday during the culture show yesterday. Also, so that's some of the news headlines. Let's go over some college football tonight. Let's see if we have some college football for you tonight. We'll have one game in progress. That'll be in the Mountain West. Let's put that up on the screen. Okay, one game tonight in the Mountain West Conference. Colorado State taking on Boise State. That is going to be 7 p.m. That'll be on, Fox Sports. I think it's Fox Sports 1. So that will be on Fox Sports 1. Now, NFL football tonight. Let's go ahead and give you NFL football. Okay, NFL football. NFL football tonight. On Thursday Night Football will be the Colts taking on the Titans. That'll be at 7:20. That'll be on Fox and NFL Network. So that game is going to be tonight. Once again, Tennessee has a 56.2% chance of winning that game tonight. In retrospect, points scored per game. Tennessee averages 29 points. The Colts average 26 points. Points allowed. Tennessee allows 25 points a game. The Colts allow only 20. Total yards of offense. The Titans average 395 yards. The Colts 365. Now passing, both teams is kind of similar right there. Colts at 263, and the Titans at 247. Now running the football, the Titans are at 147. The Colts are at 102. Yards allowed. The Colts are at 307. The Titans are at 403. Passing yards allowed. The Titans at 284, and the Colts at 223. Now, the rushing yards allowed, the Colts are at 183 and 119 for the. Now, the last 5 games, was giving those last 5 games. Indianapolis did lose to Baltimore. Chicago, the Titans lost to the did win to the Bears last week, so they won their game last week against the Bears. So both teams are 5 vying for playoff consideration. So that game will be later on tonight. Your leaders is Ryan Tannehill and Phillip Rivers. The rushing yard leaders are Derrick Henry and Taylor for the Colts. Receivers is A.J. Brown and Zach Pascal with the Indianapolis Colts. So once again, that game will be going on tonight. That'll be 7:20 on Thursday Night Football. So let's see what's going on in the world of sports. I'm gonna scroll down to some news. Okay, let's see. Let's scroll down and see what we could talk about. Looks like we'll go to this one. Okay, Liverpool defensive crisis worsens with Gomez injury, sources say. So this is from James Early. You can reach him at ESPN. He is the FC reporter. So let's go ahead and play this video and listen in what they're saying about this with Liverpool's defensive crisis. Let's listen into that.
This injury as well. Stevie Nicol joining me now for ESPN FC. It's not what Liverpool needed, is it, Stevie?
It's a disaster again. You're talking 3 of your back 4 gone in the space of 6 weeks. Virgil van Dijk obviously was a complete disaster. Alexander Arnold going down made things tougher. With Joe Gomez going down now, it's almost where did he turn? You got a couple of kids, and Williams and Phillips. You've got Matip, who can't.
It looks like Liverpool's. It looks like their defensive players. It looks like it's an absolute disaster. What these guys are saying. I'll be honest with you. Look, they're going to have to get some players that's going to have to fill that void. So that's what's going to have to happen if Liverpool wants to be wants to challenge for that championship. So let's listen some more.
Stand on 2 feet for more than 90 minutes at a time. I've certainly 2 90 minutes in a row. Where do they go? I really don't know. I mean, Klopp's going to have to come up with some sort of genius plan. Maybe they're going to have to go 3 at the back, have more people in the middle of the park to stop the opposition getting at the back line, considering the names on the back of the jerseys they're going to end up with, whoever it may be. So this could be a big turning point in Liverpool's season. It's easy to say, well, you know what, with the firepower they got going forward, just score more goals, but that's an awful lot to ask. So it'll be interesting to see what Klopp does.
Yeah, like I said, they're absolutely giving you a brief description of what's going on in Liverpool. So once again, hopefully their situation gets better. So once again, this is from ESPN. Go to ESPN.com. Yeah, let's see what they're talking. What else they'll discuss? It's like not much there. So I'm going to put these predictions out on the screen. Okay, once again, 2020, 2021 SEC predictions. When Kentucky returns to the Final Four, I'm gonna kind of go out on a limb and say, yeah, it most likely will return to the Final Four. They most likely going to have a good team going into the 2020-2021 college basketball season. So I'm looking for bigger things out of Kentucky. So to be honest with you. So once again, this is from ESPN Plus. Go to ESPN Plus. Okay, let's go over to Crescent City Sports. We'll go to local sports. We'll switch over to Crescent City Sports website, and we'll see what's happening on there. Okay, let's talk about caution when entering. Don't underestimate Saints' second half schedule. I think we should not underestimate that schedule because, to be honest with you, they're going to have some teams that's going to be a wrecking force against this team. So I'll be honest with you right now. With San Francisco this Sunday and also Atlanta the next week, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't. Like I said, we would have to go 4-0 in order to finish out this season. So that's something right there we're going to have to do. We cannot underestimate these teams that's going to be on the schedule because let me tell you something. If we're going to be playing Minnesota, that's going to be on Christmas Day. That's something you cannot underestimate because Minnesota has our number for so many years. Now, this game against the 49ers, yeah, I'm pretty sure this game is probably going to be most likely a 10 to 15 point victory. Now they'll travel. Now on December 13th, they will take on the Eagles. That's another team that's probably going to be a force. Now the Kansas City Chiefs will come in on the 20th. That's another game that we cannot absolutely underestimate because these teams are still good in the fold. But I don't want to see this team fall apart in those last couple of games. I don't want to see that. I want this team to progress, absolutely progress. So once again, this is from Crescent City Sports. Go to crescentcitysports.com. I'm going to go over to the previous screen. I'm going to once again, LSU basketball announces early signing for 2021 class. So once again, Coach Forges is absolutely just putting out there those recruits. Now these are your recruits. Graves, she's from Ponchatoula. Also Hall, she's from Illinois. That's Grace Hall. Also Logan McNeil from Rockwell, Texas, is another individual that's going to be, and then Tamia Ugrass from Minnesota, and also Timber Ware from Illinois. So I'd say that this is a very good recruiting class coming in for Coach Forges. So once again, this is from Crescent City Sports. Go to crescentcitysports.com. Julie Wilson is the writer. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, let's go to this interview. We're going to talk about. We're going to play this interview from Jim Mora talking about last week's game against the Bucs. So we're going to play this interview with Jim Mora. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for you. One second to load it.
With Ken Trahan, former Saints head coach Jim Moore, and Michael Cobble of WVRZ in Baton Rouge. See you tomorrow, straight up 4 o'clock. My name is Eric Asher. Have a wonderful evening. From the dog catch to the governor, they all got to go.
Anytime, anywhere. Smartphone, tune-in radio app. We are 1061 Nash Icon, WRKN, Picayune, New Orleans. Good evening and welcome to All Access in 1061.
Not only here and part of our Saints Hall of Fame for many years, but also with the Colts and a great analyst to this day on WDSU. Good to visit with Coach Jim Moore. Jim, listen, thanks for the time. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ken. How you doing? It's nice to talk to you.
Listen, I'm doing great. Thank you. And not as well as the Saints. That was a smashing performance last night. You were part of some really good wins here. And you know the history of the franchise. Hadn't won until you got here. And I've been here for all 54 years. In my estimation, it's not an overstatement. I really think that was the most complete football game I think the New Orleans Saints have ever played, considering the opposition, the situation, the weather, the location, the revenge factor, and more. I don't think that's overstating the case.
No, I don't either. And I think that the most important thing you said was considering the competition, because this Tampa Bay team's a really good team. They're one of the better teams in the NFL, for sure the NFC. I've been watching them through the course of this season and been very impressed because Bruce Arians was on my staff at New Orleans and also in Indianapolis, and we've stayed close. And he's brought in some really good players there, and they've drafted well. And, they've been very impressive in the games that I've seen them play this year. And frankly, I follow the Saints obviously every week, watch every minute of their games, and always rooting for them. And but I just had over the course of the 10 or 12 years that I've worked for WDSU, and I've been able to participate in some national games. We come back and did the Saints on 6 and all that kind of stuff. And they've always asked me, Fletcher Mackel, the sports director there at WDSU, has always asked me to give a score or a prediction of the Saints game that we're covering that particular Sunday or Monday night. And I've felt this way, given the edge to the Saints. I've always felt that they had the better team, and I've never given a score of the other opponent. And I've been right most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time. But for this Tampa Bay game, for some reason, over the course of the early season here, of the 6-7 games the teams have played, I've been watching both Tampa Bay and the Saints, obviously, very closely, and I had a gut feeling that Tampa Bay was playing better, was a better team, and I had a gut feeling that Tampa Bay was going to win this game. And so I gave Fletcher last week the score that I felt it would be, with Tampa Bay winning. And I worried when I did that because I didn't want people in New Orleans or the Saints or whatever to think that I was critical of the Saints, because I wasn't. But I just had a gut feeling that I thought Tampa was a better team. And boy, did they get smashed. And smashing was a great word that you used just early in our conversation tonight. A smashing performance by the Saints, totally domination over a good, and I think that was the important thing, a good Tampa Bay team, one of the better teams in the league. So I agree with you. I think it was as good a football team as maybe, considering everything on the road, the whole deal, as a Saints team has ever played.
I know your
That's a long
personality.
answer to your question.
It is. No, it's a good answer. I know your personality. I know your coaching personality, and I know what you probably like the most is the fact that this New Orleans Saints team, the reason they became an elite team and a team that could contend annually for championship honors is the fact that they built inside out. They were simply better up front on both sides of the football. Their offensive line did a great job. They ran the ball effectively. Of course, nobody touched Breeze, and defensively, their defensive line had pressure on Brady and was on him all game. You went up front in the league. You still do, don't you?
Do I what now? Ask me that again.
I said you still win up front in this league. That's where you win.
Yes. You win up front. I mean, if you can dominate or be superior to your opponent, both offensive line, defensive front, and
Yes. Like I said, if you can dominate up front, yeah, you can win the game. That's 4 factors going into these games. Offense, defense, special teams, and not getting penalties. That's just what the formula for this win last Sunday was. Sure, Taysom Hill was a factor in this game, but when you have a dominating performance like that, all bets are off. So once again, we're listening to what Jim Mora had to say to Ken Trahan. That's on Crescent City Sports All Access. So once again, we'll play the video. So I'll go ahead and play the video through, and I'll give you my analysis on them as we go.
Most of the time going to win the football game, and the Saints were very much that last night. You know, the thing also, you know, there's been some criticism of the Saints secondary, and and I've been critical of it when I've watched games and all, and yet and Tampa Bay has some really good receivers, and I thought the secondary did a heck of a job last night, really good job, and I was really proud of them because they've come under some criticism. I know that.
Totally agree. Of course, one of the things we've heard all year long, and listen, you know as well as I do, you have to lock out the noise. You can't listen to all the commentary and so forth and so on. And we've heard this new phenomenon this year about air yards attached to Drew Brees, which I think is ridiculous. Analytics,
what's
air, the term air yards.
I think to me that air yards crap is just absolutely just blown over, way blown over time. That's something. Look, I don't give a damn about. I don't give a damn about those air yards. Look, long as he performs on that field, I don't care about air yards. I don't care about none of that stuff. So that's my opinion on it. So let's go ahead and listen in.
In other words,
yards.
Yeah, yards per attempt. So we've heard this all year long about Breeze, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Bottom line is, you want to get the ball to the right person in space and let him make a play, whether it's 5 yards up the field or 50 yards up the field. He does that as well as anybody that's ever played the game, and he's done that this year.
Yeah, he's done a great job of that, and he always has. You know, I think that's been a trademark of him, and certainly they would like to, you know, complete 50 and 60-yard pass plays, but that's hard to do, and he takes what they give him, and I think that Sean Payton does a great job of coming up with game plans to attack the opponent, to let Drew do this, and then Drew takes advantage of it, and he's got, you know, when we get him Michael Thomas back, get him Sanders back, Callaway back from last week, and you know, those guys too make a big difference, but they do what the defense gives them, and they do it effectively, and they win games by doing it.
Jim Mora, our guest, and when people look at games, sometimes matchups matter, and the Saints would seem to match up with this team pretty well for a couple of reasons. Number one, the aforementioned being better up front. I think the Saints are better up front than Tampa Bay. And number two, Marshawn Lattimore, who erases Evans every time they play this team. It's been that way for the last 3 years now, where when he plays Evans does nothing. And then, of course, you have the presence of Malcolm Jenkins being able to play Gronkowski, who admittedly is not the same player he once was. But when you can take away a couple of primary weapons from an opposing team, it gives you a leg up, doesn't it?
Oh, there's no question about it. And I know that, you know, Lattimore, he's really a good player, and he does a good job against most receivers. I think one of the hardest positions to play in the NFL is a defensive cornerback, because those receivers are so talented. They make these unbelievable catches every weekend when I watch these games. I mean, with guys, defensive people hanging all over them, and they'll come up with the ball. And it's amazing to me. And you know, they're running forward. The defensive backs are running backwards. That's an advantage the offense has. So it's tough to play defensive back in the NFL or even in college too, because those receivers do a good job also. But I was Jenkins and Lattimore both played very well, and that was a big difference in the ball game. One of the biggest difference.
One of the other things that has really occurred in the midst of this win streak is that the Saints have curbed their early season penchant for enormous penalties. As you saw, they led the league in penalties through the first 3 weeks of the season. That's really gone the other way.
That's why I say that's the biggest improvement is the penalties. Because look, the first 3 weeks of the season, to be honest with you, we've been leading in the penalties. So I'm glad to see the penalties are being minimized in games, to say the least. So I just hope, once again, it does continue on that trend. So once again, Jim Moore talking about last Sunday's game against the Bucks. So let's go ahead and play some of the clips of it.
In the game last night, they had just 3 penalties for 28 yards. That's a big item to subtract if you want to win consistently, isn't it?
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, like you say, the first few games they were highly penalized, and then last night, like you say, 3 for 28 yards. That's amazing in an NFL game. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. So what I say is why? Why all of a sudden did they go from this to this in a number of categories, not just penalties, but they've made the improvements. That's a credit to Sean and his staff, and also the players. And it's a class organization. I think they've got classy players. I think they've got a great coaching staff. I've always been a Sean Payton. I've always thought he was as good as there is in college or NFL coaching, and they've made a lot of improvement in a lot of areas over these first 7 or 8 weeks, and they look like the Saints that they can be and could be and should be. I don't know if they're going to play every game like they played, especially against a good team like Tampa, but the NFL, things change every week, and you can only take it 1 week at a time. But, boy, last night was something special to watch.
Jim Moore visiting with us for a few minutes. Coach, the other stat that stood out to me was the obvious, and that was time of possession, something you always valued. The Saints had the ball for 40 minutes and 4 seconds, and Tampa Bay had the ball for 19 minutes and 56 seconds, largely because they went 3 and out so much. And they attempted 5 running plays, the fewest ever in an NFL game, and one of those was a kneel down by Gabbert at the end of the game.
Yeah. Well, that's an important stat.
Yes, that right there, the time of possession absolutely is the important stat of the day. Because the Saints had the ball for 40 minutes, and the Buccaneers last Sunday had the ball for 19 minutes. So I like what I saw out of that time of possession. I absolutely did. So once again, Jim Moore talking about last Sunday's game with Ken Trahan. That was on the day after the Saints win against the Bucks. So once again, like I said, Jim Moore hit the hammer on the nail. He's correct on those things. When, like I said, when you have time of possession, also turnovers and stuff like that, and your turnovers is at +3, you're winning the game. But if you're at -3, you're not winning the game. Period. End of story. So once again, let's wrap this up. We just played a few minutes of Jim Moore. Once again, if you want to listen to the full interview, you can go to CrescentCitySports.com. That's CrescentCitySports.com. Listen to the full interview with Jim Moore. So let's wrap this up. Okay, once again, thanks for joining us for this edition of Sports Talk with Kerry Wehmeyer Show for Thursday, November 12th, we'll be back most likely later with, I think we'll have Sports Time New Orleans, or maybe we'll have the sports update later on. So probably do that later on this evening. So we'll do that on Sportscaster. So once again, we'll be back later broadcasting. So we want to get back. So once again, please like, share, and follow us on Facebook. Like, share, and follow us on Twitter. Like, share, and follow us on YouTube. We will be on there till Monday next week. We'll be back on Twitter next week. Also, like, share, and follow us on the Tumblr page, and like, share, and follow us on the official flagship and play-by-play coverage of LSU Tulane Saints, Southeastern Louisiana University athletics. We are Sportscaster. Follow us at sportscaster.com/KLW. Also follow us on the Twitch channel. Follow us on Instagram at Sports Talk 2505. And also follow us on Skype. And follow us on LinkedIn pages. We are on LinkedIn. Also follow us on Blogspot. That will be, follow us on Blogspot. That will be, the posters will be on Blogspot. So once again, everybody have a good rest of your Thursday. We'll be back on Sportscaster later with maybe Sports Time or Sports Update. So that probably will be those shows, one of those shows. So everybody have a good rest of your for the Facebook and YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow with Sports Talk. And also tomorrow night, we'll have the Friday Night High School Football Show here on StreamYard and Sportscaster. We'll go through, we'll have the audio broadcast of the original Prep Football Roundup. And also at 11 p.m., we'll have the Friday Night Football Show that will be on WGNO NOAA 38. So that will be tomorrow night. So once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back later.